I watched from my car as the valet handed her luggage to the bellhop. She was laughing at something he said, that specific laugh she used to do with me back when things were real. The man next to her wasn't wearing a wedding ring anymore, but the tan line was obvious even from 50 yards away. Welcome to Cheating Story Exposed. Real stories, real justice, no sugarcoating. You know what? I notice many of you watching haven't hit that subscribe button yet. Here's the thing, we drop stories like this every single day. Stories about people who got played, got smart, and got even. If you want to see how these situations really end, subscribe now and turn on notifications. Trust me, you don't want to miss what happens next. My name is Ethan. I'm a 37-year-old software engineer, and 3 months ago I thought I had the perfect marriage. My wife, Christine, was a senior marketing director at a mid-sized pharmaceutical company. We'd been married for 8 years, together for 11 total. No kids yet. We'd always said we were waiting for the right time, which in hindsight was probably her way of keeping her options open. The unraveling started on a Tuesday afternoon in July. Christine came home from work with that excited energy she got when something big was happening at the office. She dropped her bag on the kitchen counter and immediately started talking about this mandatory leadership conference her company was sending the senior team to in Santa Barbara. It was going to be 4 days, Thursday through Sunday, at some resort venue they'd rented out. Team-building exercises, strategy sessions, the whole corporate retreat package. She seemed genuinely enthusiastic about it, talking about the speakers they'd lined up and how this could be good for her career trajectory. She'd been angling for a VP position, and FaceTime with the C-suite executives was valuable. I supported it completely. I always supported her career. That was one of the foundations of our relationship. We both respected each other's professional ambitions. I told her to have a great time, to network hard, and to bring me back one of those overpriced hotel robes if she got the chance. The conference was scheduled for the 3rd week of August. The week before she left, Christine was noticeably busy. She had her laptop out every evening working on presentations. She went shopping for new professional outfits, power suits, she called them, the kind that made you look competent and executive. She got her hair done, her nails done. She was taking this seriously. The night before she left, we had dinner together. Nothing fancy, just pasta and wine at home. She talked about being nervous, about wanting to make a good impression. Her boss, Richard, would be there. He was the VP of marketing, the role she was eyeing. She needed to demonstrate she was ready for that level of responsibility. I kissed her goodbye Thursday morning before I left for work. She was taking an afternoon flight, planned to be at the resort by evening for the opening reception. She texted me from the airport, then from the plane after landing. Everything seemed completely normal. Thursday evening, I got a text saying she'd arrived safely, the resort was beautiful, and she was heading into the welcome dinner. Friday, I got a few updates. Sessions were interesting, lunch was great, everyone was networking hard. Saturday, a photo of her and some colleagues by a pool, all of them in business casual with drinks. Nothing suspicious. Everything exactly as you'd expect from a corporate retreat. Sunday afternoon, she texted that they were wrapping up early and she'd be home by 9 instead of 11. Great, I texted back. I'd pick up Thai food and we could decompress. She came through the door at 9:15, looking tired but happy. We ate. She told me about the conference, about the connections she'd made, about a presentation she'd given that Richard had complimented. It all sounded legitimate, detailed, believable. We went to bed. Everything was fine. Monday, she was back at the office. Tuesday evening, I was doing laundry. She'd been too tired to unpack completely over the weekend, so her suitcase was still half full in our bedroom. I pulled it out to grab the rest of her clothes, and when I unzipped the side pocket, something fell out. It was a folder. Hotel information, the kind they give you at check-in. I picked it up thinking nothing of it, but something made me actually look at it instead of just tossing it in recycling. The resort name was right there on the cover, the Encantado Coast. A luxury couples retreat and spa, not a conference center, not a corporate venue. A couples resort. I stood there in our bedroom holding this folder, and my brain couldn't quite process what I was seeing. Maybe there was a mistake. Maybe her company had booked rooms at this resort for the conference. That happened, right? Companies used nice hotels for corporate events. I opened the folder. Inside was a property map, a spa menu, information about their romantic packages and intimate dining experiences. There was a wine-tasting schedule for couples, a sunset catamaran cruise, couples yoga on the beach. This wasn't a conference venue. This was explicitly, obviously, entirely a romantic resort for couples. My hands were shaking. I sat down on the bed and pulled out my phone. I searched the Encantado Coast Santa Barbara. Their website loaded, gorgeous photos of private bungalows, couples walking on beaches at sunset, intimate cabana massages. The tagline across the home page read, "Where romance finds paradise." There was no conference center, no meeting halls, no corporate facilities at all. I went through the folder again. There was a receipt, just a generic welcome packet receipt, nothing itemized. But there was a reservation confirmation slip, and that's where everything became crystal clear. The reservation was under the name Mr. and Mrs. Patterson, Richard Patterson, her boss. I sat there for probably 20 minutes just staring at that confirmation slip. Christine's maiden name was Chen. She'd kept it professionally but legally taken my name, Mitchell, when we married. But this reservation had her listed as Mrs. Patterson. Everything inside me went cold, not hot with rage, just cold like someone had injected ice water directly into my veins. I went back to our home office and opened my laptop. I needed to think clearly, and I needed information. First, I searched Christine's company website for their press releases and corporate news section. If there had actually been a leadership conference that week, there'd be some mention of it, some announcement. Nothing, no conference, no retreat, no leadership event listed anywhere. I checked her company's LinkedIn. Several of the senior team members she'd claimed were attending had posted that week from the office. Regular work updates. No one at a conference. I went to Richard Patterson's LinkedIn. He'd posted on Friday a generic motivational quote about leadership, posted from Santa Barbara, just Santa Barbara, not at a great conference or learning with the team. Just location tagged Santa Barbara. I sat back in my chair and let the full picture come together. Christine hadn't gone to a conference. She'd gone to a romantic resort with her married boss for 4 days. She'd lied to me completely, elaborately, with props and preparation and detailed fake stories about presentations and networking, and she'd been careless enough to leave the evidence in her luggage. The rage would come later, I knew. Right then, I was in a different mode. My brain had shifted into something analytical and cold. I wasn't thinking about confronting her immediately. I was thinking about what I needed to do this smart. I needed evidence, real evidence. Documentation that would hold up legally, because I already knew where this was going to end. I left the hotel folder exactly where I'd found it and repacked her suitcase the way it had been. If she'd forgotten about it, I didn't want to tip her off that I'd discovered it. I needed time to build my case. That night, Christine came home from work normal as ever. We had dinner. We watched TV. She told me about her day at the office, about a client meeting, about regular workplace things. She was relaxed, comfortable, clearly not worried about being caught. I matched her energy. I was calm. I asked appropriate questions. I acted like everything was fine. Inside, I was already 3 steps ahead. The next morning, after Christine left for work, I took the hotel folder and photographed every page. Then I put it back exactly where it had been. I created a new encrypted folder on my laptop and started a file. Evidence, documentation, timeline. I called a private investigator that afternoon. I found him through a professional reference, a colleague whose brother had used him during his own divorce. I wasn't ready to use the word divorce out loud yet, but I was thinking it. His name was Vincent. We met at a coffee shop downtown, somewhere Christine would never go. I showed him the hotel folder photos, explained the situation, and asked what he could provide. He was straightforward. He could verify her current activities, track her movements, document any ongoing affair. But what I really wanted was retroactive proof of what had happened at that resort, and that was harder to get after the fact. However, he said, if the affair was ongoing, and if she'd gotten away with it once, it probably was, we'd have opportunities to document it fresh. Affairs didn't usually happen once. They continued until they were stopped. I hired him on the spot. Vincent started monitoring Christine's patterns immediately. Her phone location, her schedule, her habits. He was discreet and thorough. Meanwhile, I played the perfect supportive husband. I asked about her day. I planned date nights. I gave her absolutely no reason to suspect I knew anything. 2 weeks later, Vincent called me. Christine was having late dinners with Richard Patterson, not at restaurants where colleagues would go, at intimate places across town. Wine bars, quiet bistros, places you take someone when you don't want to be seen by people you know. He had photos. The 2 of them at a corner table, leaning close, her hand on his arm, him refilling her wine glass, body language that told the whole story. I looked at those photos in Vincent's car, parked outside my office building, and something solidified inside me. The last tiny hope that maybe I'd misunderstood, that maybe there was some explanation, disappeared completely. Vincent also found out that Richard Patterson was married. Wife's name was Teresa. 2 teenage kids, 22 years of marriage. He was risking all of that for Christine, and Christine was risking our marriage for him. I asked Vincent what he'd need to catch them in the act again. He said if there was another overnight trip, another conference or work event, that would be the opportunity. Affairs that had worked once tended to repeat the same patterns. I went home that night and acted normal. Christine was working late, genuinely at the office this time, Vincent had confirmed. When she got home at 9, I had dinner waiting. She was appreciative, a little surprised. She kissed my cheek and said she was lucky to have me. The cognitive dissonance of hearing that while knowing what I knew was almost surreal. 3 weeks later, in mid-September, Christine came home with news. There was another conference. Different topic this time, a regional marketing summit in San Diego, 3 days, Thursday through Saturday. Richard would be there along with most of the senior marketing team. She was selling it harder this time. Showing me the email invitation, talking about the speakers, showing me the agenda that had been sent out. It all looked official. I told her it sounded great. I encouraged her to go. I helped her pack. As soon as she left on Thursday morning, I called Vincent. He'd already anticipated this and had things ready to move. He tracked the reservation, the Rosewood at Sea Cliff. Another couple's resort, this one in La Jolla, just outside San Diego, no marketing summit. The resort didn't even have conference facilities. This time, I wasn't staying home. I packed a bag Thursday afternoon. I booked a room at a hotel 5 minutes from the Rosewood. I put together a folder, copies of the hotel confirmation from Santa Barbara, Vincent's surveillance photos, bank statements showing charges from the Encantado Coast on our credit card that Christine had told me were client dinners, phone records showing the volume of texts and calls between her and Richard. And I had my lawyer draft divorce papers. Not filed yet. I wanted her to be served in person, and I wanted it to hurt. I also called Richard Patterson's wife. That was the hardest call I've made in my life. I didn't know Teresa. I'd never met her. But she deserved to know what her husband was doing, the same way I deserved to know what my wife was doing. I called her Thursday evening. I was direct but compassionate. I told her who I was, that I was married to Christine Chen, and that I had proof her husband was having an affair with my wife. I offered to show her everything I had. There was silence on the line for a long moment. Then she said very quietly that she'd suspected something but hadn't had proof. She asked if I was certain. I told her I was certain. I told her they were together at the Rosewood at that exact moment and that I was planning to confront them in person the next day. I asked if she wanted to be there. She said yes immediately. We made a plan. I'd pick her up Friday morning. We'd drive to La Jolla together. We'd walk into that resort and we'd end this. I barely slept Thursday night. I wasn't nervous. Exactly, I was too focused for that. But I was running through scenarios, thinking through what I'd say, how I'd handle it. Friday morning, I picked up Teresa at 8. She was a composed woman, probably mid-40s, dressed professionally. She didn't cry. She didn't rage. She just looked tired and determined. We drove to La Jolla mostly in silence. There wasn't much to say. We were 2 people who'd been betrayed by people we'd trusted, and we were about to make those people face consequences. We arrived at the Rosewood around 11. Vincent met us in the parking lot. I'd asked him to be there as a witness and to document everything. He had a camera with a long lens and a digital recorder. The resort was beautiful. Ocean views, manicured gardens, elegant Spanish architecture, romantic music playing softly through outdoor speakers. It was the kind of place you'd take someone you loved for an anniversary. We walked into the main lobby. The receptionist smiled at us warmly until she saw our expressions, and then her smile faltered. I walked up to the desk and said very calmly that I needed to know what room Christine Mitchell was staying in. The receptionist looked confused and said she couldn't give out guest information. I clarified. Christine Chen, possibly registered under Christine Patterson or Mrs. Patterson. The receptionist's face changed. She looked uncomfortable now. She asked if I was family. I said I was her husband, and that the man she was here with was this woman's husband. I gestured to Teresa. And if she didn't tell me what room they were in, I'd call the police and report identity fraud since my wife was using someone else's last name on a hotel registration. The receptionist looked panicked. She asked us to wait a moment and called a manager. The manager appeared within a minute. a polished woman in her 30s who'd clearly dealt with situations like this before. She took one look at us and asked us to step into a private office. The office, I laid it out simply. My wife and this woman's husband were having an affair. They were currently at this resort together. I had documentation proving it. I was going to confront them, and the manager could either facilitate that quietly or I could make a scene in the lobby that would disturb every guest in this resort. The manager looked at Teresa, who nodded once, her face like stone. The manager sighed and pulled up her system. Room 347. Ocean View Suite. Registered under Richard Patterson's corporate card. I thanked her. I asked if there was a way to verify they were currently in the room. She called housekeeping. The Do Not Disturb sign had been on the door all morning. Perfect. Teresa and I went to the elevators. Vincent followed with his camera. The manager, to her credit, stayed out of it but didn't try to stop us. We rode up to the 3rd floor in silence. My heart was pounding now, adrenaline finally kicking in, but my head was clear. I knew exactly what I was going to do. We walked down the hallway to room 347. The Do Not Disturb sign was hanging on the handle, just like the manager had said. I knocked. Firm, professional knock. Silence. I knocked again. Louder, a muffled voice from inside, Richard's voice, called out irritably that they didn't need housekeeping. I knocked a 3rd time and said loudly and clearly, "Christine, open the door. It's Ethan." The silence that followed was absolute, then scrambling. Frantic movement inside the room. Whispering. I waited. Finally, the door opened a crack. Christine's face appeared, her hair messy, wearing a hotel robe. Her eyes went wide when she saw me, then wider when she saw Teresa standing next to me, then widest when she saw Vincent with his camera. Her mouth opened, but nothing came out. I pushed the door open gently but firmly. Christine stumbled back. Richard was sitting on the edge of the bed, half-dressed, his face the color of old paper. I walked in. Teresa followed. Vincent stayed in the doorway, camera up. I looked at Christine and said, "The business conference in Santa Barbara was the Encantado Coast, a couple's resort. You left the hotel folder in your suitcase. This is the 2nd time you've lied about a work trip to spend a romantic weekend with Richard Patterson." Christine was shaking her head, tears starting, trying to say something about how it wasn't what it looked like, how she could explain. I held up my hand. "Don't. I have 3 weeks of evidence. Surveillance photos, bank records, phone records, the reservation confirmations from both resorts. You're listed as Mrs. Patterson. That's identity fraud on top of adultery." I turned to Richard. "And you're risking your 22-year marriage and your children's respect for a woman who doesn't care about you any more than she cared about me. You're just whoever was convenient." Teresa stepped forward then. She looked at her husband and said in a voice that could cut glass, "Pack your things. You have until Sunday to move out of the house. My attorney will contact you Monday morning." Richard started to speak, some pathetic attempt at an explanation. Teresa just turned and walked out. I pulled the divorce papers from my folder and handed them to Christine. "You're being served. I'm filing for divorce based on adultery. I have more than enough evidence. Don't bother contesting it. Don't bother asking for anything in the settlement. You get nothing." Christine was crying now, fully sobbing, trying to grab my arm. She was saying my name over and over, saying she was sorry, saying it was a mistake. I pulled my arm away. "It wasn't a mistake. It was a series of choices. You chose to lie to me. You chose to plan this. You chose to betray 8 years of marriage. You made those choices. Now live with the consequences." I looked at Richard one more time. "Christine's not the only one losing something today. Your wife just left, and when your company finds out. You've been using corporate cards to book romantic resorts with a subordinate employee. You'll be losing your job, too. I've already sent documentation to your HR department and your company's ethics hotline." His face went from white to gray. He looked like he might vomit. I turned and walked out. Vincent followed, still filming. Behind me, I could hear Christine begging me to come back to let her explain. I didn't stop. I didn't look back. In the hallway, Teresa was waiting by the elevators, her posture rigid, her face composed but her hands shaking slightly. I asked if she was okay. She nodded once and said, "Let's get out of here." We rode down in silence. We walked through the lobby, the manager and receptionist pretending not to watch. We got back to my car. On the drive back, Teresa asked how I'd known. I told her about finding the hotel folder, about hiring Vincent, about putting the pieces together. She said she wished she'd known sooner, but she was grateful I'd told her. She asked if I'd really sent everything to Richard's company. I had. That morning before picking her up, I'd compiled a comprehensive package. The evidence of the affair, the misuse of company resources, the ethical violations of a VP having a relationship with a direct report. I'd sent it to HR, to the ethics hotline, and to the CEO's office. Richard Patterson's career was over. Teresa said quietly that she hoped it was worth it for them. The lies, the sneaking around, the destruction of 2 marriages and Richard's career. She hoped those few weekends were worth it. I said I didn't think anything could be worth that. But people made selfish choices and convinced themselves the consequences wouldn't catch up. Until they did. I dropped Teresa off at her house around 4. She thanked me, shook my hand, and walked inside. I never saw her again, but I heard later through mutual professional circles that she took Richard for everything in the divorce and emerged significantly wealthier and happier without him. I went home. Christine wasn't there, still at the resort, presumably, or maybe she'd gone somewhere else. I didn't care. I changed the locks that evening. I called my lawyer and confirmed the divorce filing would happen Monday morning. I called my bank and separated our accounts. I called our landlord. The apartment lease was in both names, but I arranged to have Christine removed and take over the full lease. Christine tried calling me probably 50 times that night. I didn't answer. She sent texts, apologies, explanations, begging for a chance to talk. I read them. I didn't respond. She came to the apartment around 10 p.m. Her key didn't work. She knocked. She called my name through the door. I didn't open it. Eventually, she left. She stayed with a friend, I later found out. She tried reaching out to me through other people, mutual friends, her family. Everyone I told the truth. I showed them the evidence. No one took her side. Monday morning, the divorce was officially filed. By Monday afternoon, Richard Patterson had been placed on administrative leave from his job. By Wednesday, he'd been terminated for gross misconduct and misuse of company resources. Christine lost her job too, not because of the affair directly, but because the situation became so toxic at the company that she couldn't function there anymore. The story had spread through the office immediately. Everyone knew. Her professional reputation was destroyed. The divorce took 3 months to finalize. Christine initially tried to fight it, to claim she deserved half of everything despite the adultery. My lawyer crushed that immediately with the evidence we had. In the end, she signed the papers and walked away with almost nothing, just her personal belongings and her car. I kept the apartment. I kept our savings. I kept my dignity. It's been 3 months since that day at the Rosewood. I'm not going to pretend it's been easy. Divorce isn't easy, even when you're the one who initiated it, even when you're completely justified. There are still moments where I think about the good times Christine and I had back before she decided to blow up our life. But mostly I feel free. Free from the lies, free from the betrayal, free from someone who looked me in the eye every day and pretended to love me while planning her next escape with someone else. I heard through the grapevine that Christine and Richard tried to stay together after everything fell apart. It lasted about 6 weeks before they split. Turns out an affair built on lies and sneaking around doesn't translate well into an actual relationship when all the excitement of deception is gone. Teresa is apparently doing great. She got the house, significant alimony, and her kids sided completely with her. Richard sees them occasionally, but the relationships are damaged, maybe permanently. Richard's working at a much smaller company now, making significantly less money, his professional reputation permanently tarnished. Christine moved to a different city. I don't keep tabs on her. I don't care where she ended up. As for me, I'm rebuilding. I'm focusing on work, on my friendships, on my own health and happiness. I started seeing a therapist to process everything, which has helped. I'm not dating yet. I'm not ready for that, but I'm not closed to it forever either. The biggest lesson I learned from all this is that you can't control what other people do. You can't control whether they'll betray you. You can't control their choices or their selfishness. But you can control how you respond. You can control whether you let them destroy you or whether you take that power back. I chose to take my power back. I chose to document everything, to build my case, to confront the situation strategically instead of emotionally. I chose to protect myself legally and financially. I chose to walk away from someone who didn't value me, and I'd make the same choices again. If you're watching this and you've discovered a betrayal, here's my advice. Don't react immediately. Don't confront in the heat of emotion. Take time. Gather evidence. Build your case. Protect yourself legally. Then when you have everything you need, you act decisively and you don't look back. Christine destroyed our marriage the moment she decided to lie to me and book that first romantic resort with Richard. But I controlled how that destruction ended. I controlled the narrative. I controlled the outcome, and I won. That's the story. That's how a business conference turned out to be a couple's resort, and how I showed up with divorce papers and destroyed not just an affair but 2 careers and a marriage that wasn't mine. To everyone watching, subscribe if you haven't. Hit that notification bell. Share this with someone who needs to hear it. And remember, when someone betrays you, the best revenge isn't emotional chaos. It's cold, strategic justice. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one.